Huge news regarding the Houston Rockets that'll shake up the Western Conference outlook heading into the season. Why it's all about Steph Curry for the Golden State Warriors. Duh. And JK, Jonathan Kuminga, if he's on the team this upcoming season, trending that way, what would his role be? We're going to break that down. It's Mike Loginoff and myself on today's show.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are getting close, everyone. The Golden State Warriors basketball season. Welcome into Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. You can use it across the app. Download the FanDuel app. Visit FanDuel.com today. Guest on the program, it's Mike Loginoff. Played his basketball in the city of San Francisco. St. Ignatius, played some college basketball as well across the country on the East Coast. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly 95.7 The Game, the flagship of the Warriors. Also covered the team for CBS News Bay Area. If you're watching us on YouTube, thumbs up, subscriptions, very much appreciated. Radio, tell a friend to tell a friend. When I say radio, I mean whichever podcast app you like. Mike, how are we doing today? Let's talk some dubs. We have some things going on. We think
we got some things going on, but I got to say, after I had to set off on some travels, I was hoping by the time that I got back that we'd have, some more substantial news, but it seems like there's been a little bit of movement with Kuminga, some news about Steph, and maybe some news around the NBA, but excited to dive into it with you today.
Yeah, it's a weird position where we think we have a gauge of what's going on in terms of what is being thrown around with the Horfords, the Meltons, the maybe Seth Curry, and the maybe GP2. Those are probably your likely offseason moves, but something still has to go down until pen hits paper. And does anything shake up when you're talking about a few guards there, especially D'Anthony Melton? You're now looking at a Houston Rockets team that needs depth at the guard position. Fred VanVleet out for the season with a torn ACL. A lot of different ways you could look at this. Could they potentially trade his contract and try to attach draft capital to it? I don't know. Could they trade one of the towers and Tari Eason or Jabari Smith, who are both awesome? They like them both, but they have a ton of size on that team. Or is it Reed Shepherd, who's about to be their starting point guard, or maybe even Aaron Holiday, either of which is not a great spot to be in?
Yeah, brutal news for Fred, brutal news for Houston fans and the rest of, the Rockets fandom out there too. I just think it's a big shakeup at the top of the Western Conference, because after that KD trade that they made this offseason, I think a lot of people were putting them in that kind of top four class of the West. But this lack of guard depth really, makes you wonder, what does this do to Houston? Where does it put them? And how much flexibility do they really have to make a move? Because yes, they have that great wing depth, but now without Fred VanVleet, you're going to have to move off one of those pieces. You're going to especially get someone as capable as Fred VanVleet, because he's a pretty good NBA point guard. If
they're
you're
going to win now, right? They got to do something.
It's a win. They have to do something, and
they
can't pick anyone up.
With Reed as their starting point guard,
they can't do that.
The number 3 pick, but he was a G Leaguer last year. It's hard to make that gamble.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that if you're Houston. They're going to have to
14
mix
a game. He could put the ball in the basket. Actually struggled last year shooting. I think it was 39% or 37% from the floor and then 34% from deep. But still, he was a reliable shooter on that team.
And he's able to actually get them into a set and get them into the ability to actually score from the half court, because I think we saw when the series got ugly against the Warriors last playoffs, you saw Fred VanVleet as being a pretty reliable guy that they could go to in the half court. But that same reason, that's why they went out and got KD, right? And so I think it really shakes things up. And frankly, given how competitive the West is, it doesn't, if they don't make a move, or if they make a move around the margins and try and pick up someone, at the level of, for example, I don't know, a Tyus Jones sort of a point guard, just a stopgap for a season. Still, even at that, I think you're probably looking at, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't have a crystal ball, Chuck. I don't know if you do, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see Houston fall out of that top 6 and could be a 7 or 8 seed like the Warriors were last season, frankly, without having that strong guard play, I think it really brings into question the integrity of the roster and the construction of the roster.
Yeah, but like we did say, they have those towers on the team, and Tari and Jabari, and then you got Steven Adams. You picked up Clint Capella. Like, they almost built the roster with the contingency plan or the emergency plan of, hey, maybe we can move off one of these players, and obviously not with this in mind, but they have the ability to do that. Will they do that? Is the question.
I mean, they have to. They have to do it because, I mean, what, you're going to trot out Reed Shepherd out there to try and be your starting point guard? I don't think that the Rockets are.
Could you trade that $25 million contract, which is 2 years? It's this year. It's also next year. If you attach a pick to it, do you think? Is there a team in the NBA that has a guard that you could think would be like, we'll take the pick? Washington? I don't know.
I mean, heck. Maybe. What about New Orleans and Jordan Poole? That would be kind of funny. That would be that would be an interesting way to shake things up in the NBA. But I mean, I think Fred VanVleet still has value, right? Even, I mean, because he's not incredibly expensive, like you said, $25 million. Sure, you take a year off of it, but you got to pick for that. You get compensated for that, and then he comes back and can help you contribute. And I mean, Washington's actually not a bad shout, Chuck, too, because they have such a young core that they're trying to develop. That actually might be something interesting to them when they, look at the next season. Okay, maybe Fred VanVleet can play the exact same role that he played in Houston, of kind of helping these young guys with some veteran experience. And obviously, they got Chris Middleton out there now too. So that's actually something that I don't see as completely out of the question. But I think it definitely has a lot of ripple effects for how we think about the Western Conference now as things stand.
D'Anthony Melton, he's a guard. He's unsigned. We think there's some verbal agreement. Is the verbal agreement, is the handshake deal that strong to where Houston couldn't go fishing in the Bay Area waters?
Well, they still can't pick him up unless they make a move, because they got they're hard capped at the first apron. I think they got about $1.4 million of wiggle room. To be able, and here's the wonderful reality in which we live in this day and age of the CBA. The Rockets also could get an injured player exception that grants them about $14 million of cap room. But because of that first apron, they're actually not able to even access the injured player exception. But perhaps maybe they'll be able to get someone and just, they'll get a nice endorsement deal where they have to go, they don't even have to show up, and maybe they get $28 million.
Coming up, Steph Curry voted best American player in the NBA still. That includes players like Anthony Edwards. There are some awesome players in the NBA from the United States. And Steph Curry, per 20 ball knowers, saying that Steph Curry, the best American. What does that mean for the rest of the Golden State Warriors roster construction? And mainly what the Warriors are asking of Jonathan Kuminga right now. We're going to get into that debate. It's coming up on Locked On Warriors. Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And if you do not have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. You always want to know, and that's where Monarch Money brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. You can use it on your laptop or on your phone. Gives you some tasks to get started, hooking up all your accounts, everything, from apps to anything and everything, cards. And Monarch helps you notice 401ks, blends everything together, tells you your entire net worth. You can start savings plans. You can set goals. It's all there on Monarch Money. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Very good deal. Cuts it off in half. It's good pricing. You can get 50% off your first year by using the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. Let's get back to the show. All right, Mike. Steph Curry is named the best American player in the NBA per a survey of 20 coaches, scouts, and executives. Ball knowers got together. They voted best American player in the NBA. I don't know how it goes down. They're just hanging out at a summer league game or something, and they're, hey, fellas, what do you say we vote who the best American player is? It's just American players. But Steph Curry, that's that's quite the feat, considering there's a guy named Anthony Edwards and, if healthy, Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, the list goes on and on of really good American players, and Steph, according to the ball knowers, still right there.
And I mean, that's just a testament to, I think, why the front office made that move last year to pick up Jimmy and to give Steph that, second option that he needed, but also kind of brings us to reflect on the unfortunate reality of the 2 timeline approach, right? Because the Dubs they win with, or they lose against the Raptors, and then Steph gets hurt. Those kind of middling years are a little bit of a wash. But then we get to 2022, Warriors are able to win again. Steph catches lightning in the bottle, and still, 3.5 years later, roughly, NBA executives still say he's one of the best in the league, right? And I mean, that obviously doesn't include the likes of the world of, Jokic and Giannis and Shea, because he's Canadian, and Luka and so on and so forth. But still, as the best American player, that probably puts Steph easily at top 10, top 5, depending on who you're asking and what your preference is for players. And so it's indicative of the fact that, it's a bit of a shame that we didn't necessarily capitalize on this window with Steph. And I think that's something that the front office needs to think long and hard about as they go through these negotiations with Kuminga as well. Because if your rival executives are telling you that you have, one of the best players in the NBA, and we see here in the Locked On, number 5 overall in the NBA, I think it's necessary to give him the support that he needs to compete, and compete doesn't have to mean, okay, obviously it would be great if the Warriors can go off and again pull a run and get to the finals and see what happens and see if Steph and Jimmy and Draymond can, make some magic happen. But competition means deep playoff runs, right? It means that, you have a fighting chance every time you go out there right now. And I think if we're roughly 7-8 days away from training camp, and the Warriors can't even play 5-on-5, I think that's a little bit of an issue here. I mean, heck, I can go stand outside Warriors way and I can swing the ball a little bit and go top of key. But I think that's pretty much all I'd be able to offer them as a practice squad guy, Chuck, at this day and age. But I think it's a bit of a travesty that we haven't seen the front office make a move and figure this thing out. I mean, even just the fact that the Kuminga situation is drawn out this long goes to show you how divergent both sides probably were in those negotiations. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Where it is at one point, it's fantastic that Steph is still playing at that level, but it's also a little bittersweet because I think everyone in Dub Nation has seen the past few years not necessarily go the way that the fans had hoped. And frankly, I think it's a bit of a shame for Steph in the twilight of his career that it took him to be 37 to go pick up Jimmy for his swan song, as opposed to making a splash hit like that sooner.
Yeah, but we've now heard, and there have been differing reports on this for a long time now, but a couple things. One, the Kuminga 5 for 150, Aaron Turner coming out and saying that's not true. We obviously would have taken that. So that report that came out years ago, whether he was entertaining or, that was floated, I think was the word, whatever. That was not something that was offered per Aaron Turner. And then the other thing per, Kawakami and some other people that are around the team every day, they basically said that Kuminga was never offered up or not offered up, that the Raptors straight up didn't want Kuminga. So Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, that was, basically like the Warriors wanting Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant now confirming like, nah, I didn't want to go there. The Raptors didn't want Jonathan Kuminga. So it brings me to this, like, what do you do in a situation like that where your real only choices are to accept way below value or to make it work? And the Warriors didn't, I guess they made it work for the most part until the injury. But after that, they weren't able to even sniff making it work. He barely got over 20 minutes in his 10, 15 regular season games before they wound up.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the making it work aspect, Chuck, this is where I think it goes on JK's shoulders a little bit, frankly. I think this is something that...
For sure, but don't the Warriors have to know, like, at a certain point that that's not who he wants to be or that's not what he's going to do? Or, I mean, how many
but
flashes...
this is what... But this is the thing though too, Truck. I mean, you have rival executives around the NBA saying, okay, yeah, the Warriors still got one of the best players in the NBA, the best American player. He's better than Anthony Edwards. That's what we think. I mean, heck, when Steph went head to head with Anthony Edwards, what did he have? 13 points in 11 minutes or something like that before he hurt his hammy, right? So you see Steph's ability to still impact the game at a very, very high level. And so I guess my point is with some of the things that we've seen that come out on from JK or from his agent Aaron Turner, I guess what I'm saying is it's a little disappointing that it would take a contract to buy in. Whereas if you think about it, shouldn't you buy in, prove yourself, and then ask for that contract? It's like the chicken and the egg a little bit. And so part of me thinks that, if there is a way, what that buy-in looks like to me, frankly, because there's no doubt that Kuminga could help this team with the tools that he has, right? With his youth, with his athleticism, with his ability to get to the rim. JK has skills. I've never denied that. It's been more of a fit and an attitude and a buy-in standpoint. The way that the buy-in, I think, to me, would be ideal for this team, go play the role that Gary Payton plays. Go play that role. Go dog the best player, be active on defense, set the screen, slip, find those easy buckets, those opportunities.
There? I like the
hit me
that you threw in there. I'm going to throw in some more chips. I like, the Gary Payton role, but let's go further than that. And let's go with the mix it in with kind of like the Jordan Poole role where whether it's second unit or whether it's like the load management games where, hey, JK, we're going to,
Jimmy's out tonight.
We're going to figure it out game by game. We're going to figure it out game by game. If you get 20 minutes one night, 15 minutes one night, it's not the end of the world because the next night Jimmy's out, whatever. We're putting the ball in your hands some games it's his night, other games maybe not. That's not really a thing that teams typically do where they just pull some, trick out of their sleeve with the player who's not necessarily playing much certain nights, but he can be your dude that every single in baseball, he's like your utility guy, basically, where you can use him in different ways every single night and just buy into what they're asking. Hey, you may get 35 minutes and 23 shots tomorrow, but tonight, can you go out there? Can you grab 8 boards? Can you, like you said, play the Gary Payton role? And then if we're in a position where the ball needs to be in your hands, go cook.
I mean, that would be ideal. I think it's the caveat that I would give to you on that situation is it's challenging for players to develop rhythm. So, I'm sure there will be some big JK fans in the comments and say, okay, well, how is he supposed to develop rhythm and flow at that? I give it to you, but that's where you're able to impact the game in other ways. And I think that's what the Warriors probably haven't seen enough of to say, okay, well, hey, if the shot's not dropping or if, things aren't going your way, how can you affect the game in other ways? Right. Is that on the glass? Is that just by rim running and putting pressure on the rim? And maybe that opens up a 3 for someone else. Is that by just swinging the ball on offense? Is that by short rolling? Is that by cutting from the corner when there's, if there's a tic-tac-toe play with Draymond and Steph? All those little things that you can do to still impact the game at a high level, even when it's not happening in one column of the box score, is really important. And I think just to delineate between, Jordan Poole and JK, Jordan Poole's I think a more natural creator for others, just in his ability to pass. I don't think JK also is at the ability or has the level of ball handling that Jordan Poole had and has. And so that's a little bit tougher to kind of say, hey, go run the second unit, take it at the top of the key, do what you want. Because what made Jordan great is he kind of had the ability to play in a similar manner to a little bit. He could kind of play a clay role and come off picks. He could play with the ball in his hand as well. And so he was doing a little bit of what we would see a combination of kind of Steph and Clay. I don't see JK being able to stretch the floor like that or to create for others in the way that Jordan Poole did prior to, the events of the offseason and the ability to dribble the ball and not turn it over 20 times a game like Jordan developed the ability to. But I guess my point being is I see what you mean from, hey, JK, it's, January 17th here and, the vets don't want to play. How does 40 minutes sound? And you just go.
Coming up, what's Jonathan Kuminga's role going to be this season? That's straight ahead. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because there's tons of variety and there's tons of ways to have fun, and it depends on how much you're watching the game, quite frankly. You can do, bets what a quarter is going to look like and only have to watch the first quarter, but it feels like an entire game. You could go player props. You can go over-unders, live lines, opportunities to win big are limitless on FanDuel. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Yeah, I mean, it could work. It could work. Ultimately, I still think that this is, for the time being, will be a marriage of convenience. And I think the ultimate result will be moving off of JK for a more meaningful win now piece. And my thoughts on that, I think that they've had the opportunity to pick up another guard like a Malik Monk, for example. And this is where tying this back to even the point on Steph and the news that we're seeing about, how other executives view him. This is where it goes back to the issue of the bittersweet aspect, because if they being the front office, were able to resolve this situation more expeditiously, then there's the option that maybe some of those big men beyond Al Horford that weren't picked up, the Warriors could pick up. Or maybe there's other dynamic wings that the Warriors could have picked up that weren't guards. If they, for example, were able to get to a deal where they can, you pick up a Malik Monk and you get that unprotected first or that first round pick, because that's the reality of, okay, this is kind of where we're at. Do we think Malik Monk is better on this team, or do we think JK is better on this team to win within these next 2 years? And you have to do that math and kind of figure that out and think critically about that. But now we've missed out on the opportunity to kind of fill in some players who admittedly won't be as good as JK. I think JK has a higher ceiling than Amir Coffey. But if Amir Coffey's coming off your bench in a Moses Moody role, then that's okay. And you're getting an upgrade at the guard position and you're having your wing depth still be intact. But now the Warriors don't have that option.
True. And there's the spin, though, that if you got JK to buy in, and this entire thing was somewhere in the middle of, very sour and businesslike, somewhere in the middle to where it's not completely gone, but, there's some tough business going on. If you could get JK to buy in for just a few months, you could still basically handshake agreement. Hey, let's get you to Sacramento, but we don't want to give up Moses Moody. We'll take Malik Monk back straight up, for the 24 million or whatever, and do that deal then. Because, I know you say Moody's replaceable, but is he replaceable at this point in the offseason in a season where you want to win now?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. You bring up a very good point. And that, with that example, I think I'm just skeptical in JK's ability to buy in, frankly. The reason why is JK had 3 years to buy in. And you would imagine that if you buy in and you play well and you earn the trust of the organization, someone like a Moses Moody, for example, Moody obviously has a, higher floor, lower ceiling than Kuminga, I think. But Moody accepted that and said, hey, there's a way that I can get on the floor. There's a way that I can impact the team. There's a role that I can play. There's a way that I can help us try and play winning basketball. Moses went out and did that as a professional. There would be the 10 games where Moses plays 25 plus minutes and then he doesn't play for another 6. And people say, where'd Moody go? Right. It's like Steve forgot about him. But Moses approached that with professionalism and still showed up to work every day. He put his hard hat on, he grabbed his lunch pail, and that man went to work. And that he got rewarded with that contract, which is indicative of the fact that he earned the organization's trust. I think part of the reason why the Warriors are hesitant to pay Kuminga is because he hasn't been willing to do what the organization and what the coaching staff has been asking of him. And so I guess the point comes up, it says, okay, well, if you pay him already and he wasn't doing what you asked of him, then why do you think he'll be doing it now that you paid him, right? What's his incentive?
He got it. Question. Once you get paid, players sometimes he got paid. He got paid. He's chilling.
It's done.
But from all reports that we've heard, he's a competitive dude, and that's not necessarily the issue. He wants to, be the best. He thinks of himself as the best. The issue that I have with all of this is that they couldn't figure it out towards the latter half of last season, at least in Steve Kerr's eyes, because I would have thought, and I thought, like, go back to the Clippers game, dude. Didn't you think it was a little odd that he got that DNP to start? I thought that something went on behind the scenes. He missed a practice, whatever it may be. But if it was just a matter of like fit, you would have thought in one of those first couple Rockets games, and granted, he did get some run in one of the Rockets games. It did not look great. But I did not think towards the end of the year he was playing poor enough to the point where he would get a DNP in a must-win game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's the fit thing, though, right? It's a matter of the roster construction. And maybe you say, okay, well, if you get Horford and Melton on board, right, two willing shooters, are you then able to run JK with Horford, right? Because Horford will stretch the floor, the lane's open. If JK wants to dribble the ball through the hardwood and try and get to the rim, he can do that because the paint's clear.
That's not
right?
an
So,
aspect we're looking at. The team could be different, right? It could be very different from last year with Horford and Melton.
And it could, right? And it could. I guess my point, though, is I just think the way I kind of view it is it feels like it's time to move on from this saga, because equally, JK saying he wants to be a focal point, right? I mean, everyone can have their own interpretation of focal point. Maybe focal point is that second unit star, that utility guy. But equally, when I hear focal point, that has the same root as focus, and the focus of the Warriors, as long as Steph Curry is on the team, will be Steph Curry. After Steph Curry, it is Jimmy Butler. After Jimmy Butler, it is Draymond Green. And then after that, it's just the poo-poo platter of, you kind of take it or leave it, and whoever wants to step up. And so if JK wants to be the focal point, he can be the fourth focal point with how the roster is constructed. But is he willing to do that? I don't think he is. He hasn't proven the ability or the willingness to accept that role. And so it just goes back. It's not only us when we talk about this, Chuck, but the other executives around the league. They view Steph in such high regard that I think it's a shame that JK hasn't bought in already to that role and just accepted it. Because if he did, I mean, heck, if he did, that would be, I mean, if JK is your fourth contributor and you buy in at the level that he could, I mean, that would just be incredible. If that's your fourth contributor on an NBA team, and I use contributor deliberately because if that's a game where, okay, if JK is okay with getting two shots and they're two alley-oop dunks or maybe a fast break dunk, and then he finishes in the lane at one point, but then he finishes with 9 rebounds and 2 steals and a, plus 17 plus minus. I mean, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. But is he willing to do that? He says he is, but he hasn't proven it. Talk is cheap.
And then look, we saw it in the playoffs last year. As soon as Steph Curry gets hurt, which there's going to be games where he's just naturally off due to load management. There'll be plenty of times. And guess who option A is? We just saw in the playoffs. It's JK and it's Jimmy. Those are your two guys that are going to be taking the majority of shots. So those are some opportunities. And there's a lot of back-to-backs early in the year. There's a lot of opportunities to get Kuminga in there in favorable matchups. And I think there's a way to strategically play this to where everyone can scratch everyone's back here. But if he takes that qualifying offer, it becomes a different situation because you're going to lose him. And at that point, you're not really mending this relationship. Like, we're not trying to he's got to make it work. We're not trying to make it work anymore. It's if he comes in and literally starts doing whatever it is they're asking of him, everything they want from him, then
beautiful.
Beautiful. But otherwise they're not going to make it work at that point.
100%, 100%. And you got to give it to, I wasn't necessarily entirely a fan of some of the comments that his agents made and whatnot. I thought he could have approached it differently, but you got to give it to JK's agent from the standpoint of if he really has been able to, get up, help help JK get a better offer to this degree from the Warriors, then, more power to him.
Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Check out the show wherever you get your audio podcasts. We're free and available. You can also check us out on YouTube. Mike, appreciate you. Peace.